This is a good death.
These words, spoken by the operative in the opening moments of Serenity, encompass the central philosophical quandary at the heart of the film. Can the nobility of one's ends justify the wickedness of one's means?
I believe in something greater than myself. A better world. A world without sin.
Written and directed by Joss Whedon as the continuation of the short-lived but beloved TV series Firefly, Serenity is a sci-fi western that follows the ragtag crew of a spaceship as they get caught between a powerful agent known only as the Operative and a psychic refugee named River Tam. But beyond the spaceships and shootouts, Serenity has deep philosophical roots, grappling with age-old questions of ethics, consequentialism, and the price of a perfect world.
I believe in something greater than myself. A better world. A world without sin.
Hopefully this will come as no surprise, but the following contains spoilers for Serenity.
So I hear a word out of any of you that ain't helping me out or taking your leave, I will shoot you down.
To fully appreciate the philosophical depth of Serenity, it's important to understand the core concepts and theories that the film engages with, particularly those of consequentialism and deontology. Consequentialism is the ethical view that the morality of an action depends solely on its consequences, rather than any intrinsic property of the action itself. In other words, consequentialists believe that what makes an action right or wrong is the outcome it produces, not the nature of the action per se. This stands in stark contrast to deontological theories, which hold that certain moral actions are inherently right or wrong regardless of their consequences. A classic illustration of this ethical dilemma is the scenario of a Nazi soldier knocking on your door, asking if you're hiding Jews. A consequentialist would argue that lying to protect innocent lives is justified because it leads to a better outcome. However, a deontologist would maintain that lying is intrinsically wrong, even if it ultimately means sacrificing those lives, as it violates a fundamental moral principle. In Serenity, these competing philosophies are embodied by the operative and the crew of Serenity, respectively, which we'll now turn our attention to. The Operative, a ruthless agent of the Alliance, the central government and law enforcer of the universe, embodies extreme consequentialism. Tasked with capturing River Tam, a young psychic conditioned by the Alliance to become an assassin and who inadvertently read the minds of top government officials, the Operative is willing to commit any atrocity and justify any means to complete his mission. He strongly believes in the Alliance's goals, building a better world for its inhabitants, and River being necessary to achieve this. To him, her consent to the experimentation or isolation from her family doesn't matter. What matters is the greater good, which means, at best, her capture.
So I'll need all the logs on behavioral modification triggers. We'll have to reach out to River Tam and help her to come back to us.
Another scene that embodies the Operative's ethos is his decision to extort and kill Mr. Universe, a tech-savvy informant who can broadcast information across the galaxy.
Can't stop the signal now. Everything goes somewhere, and I go everywhere.
Treating Mr. Universe as a means to an end, the Operative coerces him to entrap Mao and his crew, and then kills him when he's no longer of use. But the most vivid instantiation of the conflict between the Operative's greater good and the more deontological views of Mao and the crew occurs at Haven. The Alliance attacks a settlement friendly to the crew of Serenity, which is slaughtered to the last man, woman, and child. As Mao soberly reflects on the death of his friends and allies, the Operative appears on a monitor to speak with him.
I'm sorry. If your quarry goes to ground, leave no ground to go to.
The Operative recognizes the horror of what he does, but deeply believes it will result in a better world. For the pure consequentialist, there are no bad tactics, only bad targets. So if killing children will lead to his goal, he will, and does, do it.
I don't murder children.
I do. If I have to.
These examples demonstrate the Operative's stubborn adherence to consequentialist ethics, his readiness to justify any means to serve his perceived higher power. But the moral good in the Firefly universe isn't, perhaps surprisingly, pure deontology. No. Mao, at least, is not one for sticking to hard rules.
Well, that makes you kind of a tease, doesn't it?
In contrast to the Operative and Alliance's consequentialism, Mao and his crew generally operate on a more deontological framework, guided by a set of moral principles that they are reluctant to compromise. They recoil with disgust at the Operative's willingness to sacrifice innocence and believe that there are lines that should not be crossed, even in the pursuit of a supposed greater good. This deontological approach is demonstrated several times throughout the film. For instance, when the crew learns that the Operative is after River, they decide to protect her even though doing so puts many others, including themselves, in danger. They believe that turning her over to the Alliance, which has already caused her immense suffering, would be wrong regardless of the consequences. This decision is guided by their moral conviction that they have a duty to protect the innocent and vulnerable. For them, human rights trump consequentialist calculus. No better world can justify the torture of the innocent. In a pivotal scene, Mao is faced with a difficult decision when the Operative threatens to kill more innocent people if he doesn't surrender River.
That girl will rain destruction down on you and your ship.
Despite the immense pressure, Mao refuses to compromise his principles and hand over someone he has sworn to protect. Sacrificing River to save the others would be a violation of his moral code. Another example occurs when the crew discovers the horrific truth about Miranda and the origins of the Reavers, a horror we'll unpack in the next chapter. The crew decides to expose the Alliance's crime, even though it means risking the relative peace, risking a potential war. They feel a moral obligation to reveal the truth, regardless of the consequences, because they believe the public has a right to know about the atrocities committed by their government. In general, then, the crew upholds a deontological ethos. Well, except for Jane, of course, who's chaotic neutral, a true mercenary. But Captain Mao will, when pressured, embrace consequentialist thinking. And since the best example of this features a trolley, it would be a crime not to bring up the trolley problem. Imagine a runaway trolley that's barreling down a track and 5 people are tied to the track ahead. You are standing next to a lever, or a lever if you're from the Wild West, that could divert the trolley onto a sidetrack. But there's a catch. There is one person tied to that sidetrack. Hence, if you do not pull the lever, 5 people will die. Whereas if you do pull the lever, you will send a trolley into one innocent person. The question is, would you pull the lever, sacrificing one person to save 5? For a utilitarian, the answer is clear. Pulling the lever is the right choice because it produces the best overall consequences, minimizing the loss of life. If River represents the innocent person on the sidetrack, the Operative and the Alliance will gladly throw the trolley her way. For the deontologist, though, the clear answer is not to pull the lever, since actively choosing to end an innocent life is morally wrong, even if it results in saving a greater number of lives. Not an easy choice, right? Well, Mao faces a very similar dilemma in an early scene in Serenity. As the crew flees from a Reaver attack, a desperate man clings to Serenity's vehicle, begging to be let aboard. However, calculating that his added weight will slow and potentially kill the crew, Mao decides to kick the lever, if you will, killing one person to save more. Mao justifies this action on consequentialist grounds, arguing that it was necessary to ensure the survival of his crew. This decision deeply troubles many of the crew members, particularly Zoe and Wash, who are disturbed by Mao's willingness to sacrifice an innocent life.
We couldn't take the weight. It would have slowed us down.
You know that for certain?
Mule won't run with 5.
This scene once again illustrates the tension between consequentialist and deontological ethics. From a consequentialist perspective, Mao made the right choice. He maximized the number of survivors. But from a deontological standpoint, he violated the fundamental principle of not treating others as a means.
It's just... in the time of war, we would have never left a man stranded.
Maybe that's why we lost.
Returning to the scene at Haven, in which the Operative torches the village to prevent Serenity from having a place to hide, Mao once again embraces consequentialist thinking by disguising his ship with the dead bodies of his friends to evade the Operative and reach the planet the Alliance wants to keep secret, a desperate act that deeply disturbs his crew.
Do you really mean to turn our home into an abomination so that we can make a suicidal attempt at passing through Reaver space?
So while the crew of Serenity broadly adheres to deontological principles, when Mao is under extreme duress, he is willing to embrace a consequentialist ethos. With the operatives' consequentialism on one hand, and the broadly deontological crew on the other, we're now well equipped to uncover the Alliance's dark secret. In the Firefly universe, a faction of men, if you will, possess a terrifying presence: the Reavers. They are the stuff of nightmares, the boogeymen that haunt the darkest corners of space.
You never heard of Reavers?
Campfire stories, men gone savage on the edge of space, killing.
They're not stories. If they take the ship, they'll rape us to death, eat our flesh, and sew our skins into their clothing. And if we're very, very lucky, they'll do it in that order.
And they do this without even a hint of mercy. Even their ships, grotesque amalgamations of scavenged parts and human remains, strike terror into the heart of the most hardened soldiers. Throughout Firefly, the origins of the Reavers are shrouded in mystery and speculation. The general theory is that they are men who ventured to the edge of the star system and were driven mad by the vast emptiness of space. An alternative theory that the wise and spiritual member of the crew, Shepherd Book, believes is that they are simply men who have been removed from civilization for too long, their humanity worn away by the harshness of life on the frontier. However, the truth about the Reavers' origin is far more disturbing. On the planet Miranda, which the Alliance tried to keep secret, and the crew of Serenity resorted to desperate measures to reach, it is revealed that the Alliance, in the attempt to create a more stable and compliant population, administrated a chemical agent called the Pax into the air processors.
It was supposed to calm the population, weed out aggression.
A utilitarian calculation that prioritized the perceived collective good over individual autonomy. However, the results were catastrophic. While most of Miranda's population did indeed become extremely passive, the situation went further than planned, and the people of Miranda seemingly lost all will to live.
The people here stopped fighting. And then they stopped everything else. There's 30 million people here and they all just let themselves die.
Worse, a small percentage had the opposite reaction.
About 0.1% of the population had the opposite reaction to the Pax.
Their aggression and primal urges were amplified to an extreme degree, turning them into the brutal, savage Reavers that now plague the universe. The Alliance's actions on Miranda demonstrate the inherent arrogance and potential for disaster in the belief that any means can be justified in the pursuit of a perceived greater good. Moreover, the Reavers serve as a haunting embodiment of the unintended consequences that can arise from even the most well-intentioned actions. They are a testament to the idea that the road to hell is often paved with good intentions, and that the attempts to engineer a perfect society can often lead to the creation of something far worse. Sadly, it echoes real-world atrocities that have been justified on consequentialist grounds, from the Soviet gulags to the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. These are the logical endpoints of a philosophy that places outcomes above all else, in the name of a supposed greater good. As the truth about Miranda and the Reavers is revealed, the operatives' faith in the Alliance and idealized consequentialist philosophy begins to crumble. Confronted with the horrifying reality of the government's actions and their devastating consequences, he is forced to question the very foundations of his beliefs. It highlights a turning point where he begins to question whether the ends truly justify the means. Though the operative hints at a profound disillusionment, surrendering the role of Utilitarian Enforcer and seemingly unwilling to act further without the foresight of the consequences, it is not clear that he has entirely abandoned his consequentialist beliefs. In the end, Serenity offers a nuanced exploration of the age-old debate between consequentialism and deontology. It recognizes the seductive allure of consequentialist thinking, the temptation to believe that any means can be justified in the pursuit of a noble end. But it also exposes the dangers of this approach, the way it can lead to horrifying unintended consequences and the erosion of basic human rights and dignities. Through the character arc of Mal, the actions of the operative, and the revelation of the Reaver's origin, the film argues for the importance of deontological principles in guiding our actions. Yet the film also recognises, through Mal's decisions, that sometimes consequentialist thinking can be necessary in extreme situations, and that the realities of survival can require difficult and, on the surface, seemingly immoral choices. Ultimately, Serenity does not offer easy answers, but rather invites us to grapple with the profound ethical questions at its core. In doing so, it becomes more than just a thrilling space adventure, but a profound mediation on the very nature of morality and the endless struggle to preserve our humanity in the face of impossible choices.